Okay. Hi, everyone. It's 11 o'clock, so I think we will begin. Before I introduce today's host, who's here, Lachlan, I will just run you guys through the guidelines, just to keep in mind. So each session will be around an hour long. If you guys want to ask questions, please use the chat box, and I can then convey the questions and relay them to Lachlan. That's always available to you. Please keep yourself on mute when you're not talking so that there are no unnecessary interruptions, because we all know that can get a little difficult to deal with. But the good news is the sessions will be recorded and they'll be available on the IKFF website and on the IKFF YouTube channel. So in case you guys feel like you've missed anything, don't worry. You can always go back to the recorded sessions. We'll send you guys the details. You and your schools the details as soon as they're uploaded. And please keep a pen and paper with you during the duration. You can take notes. There'll be a lot to learn today. So take your notes, ask your questions, and yeah, we look forward to interacting with you guys. I'm just going to introduce Lachlan now, and then he can take it away. So Lachlan is a writer, director, and animator based in Brisbane in Australia. He is most known for the film that we'll be watching today, which was an Academy Award nominated short film called An Ostrich Told Me the World is Fake, and I think I believe it. He studied animation at the Griffith Film School in Brisbane and is currently a PhD candidate. He specializes, as you will see, in the medium of stop motion animation. And this is a really, really wonderful film. It was nominated for last year's Oscars. This year's Oscars, I believe, 2023 maybe. And
yeah, beginning of the year. Yeah.
Beginning of the year. So this is a really great opportunity. So please, pay attention and ask away. And over to you, Lachlan. Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, thank you very much for that welcome. And thanks everyone for having me. It's good to be here to talk to you today about what I do, which is stop motion animation. So I'm a stop mo animator. And what that means is I specialize in a very particular style of animation. Maybe you've heard of like hand-drawn animation or 2D animation, or maybe you've heard of 3D animation or computer animation, maybe something like Disney or DreamWorks or something like that. I specialize in a completely different type of animation called stop motion, where we're animating real world objects. So you might have seen maybe Chicken Run or Wallace and Gromit or Coraline or Fantastic Mr. Fox is another one. So that's the kind of animation that I deal with. So I was lucky enough to make a film called An Ostrich Told Me the World is Fake, and I think I believe it. This was a short film that I made at university as part of my higher degree research. And I was lucky enough to travel the world with this film. It played in festivals such as Annecy, Stuttgart, Zagreb. It went all around the world, and it was a really wild journey for me. And it ended sort of at the beginning of this year with the Student Academy Awards. You can see myself there all dressed up next to the Oscars statue. And then a couple of months later, I went back to LA for the big Oscars event. So it was a real dream come true for me. And yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about how I made that film. But before I do, I am going to play the film for those who haven't seen it. But I'm sure some of you have already seen it, but you get to see it again. So I'm going to play that now, and yeah, please enjoy.
So it has two different settings. It has two large bread slots. It comes in white and slightly darker white. It's a really good toaster. Now, how much would you pay for a toaster like that? you already have a toaster, right? D- do you want another one?
Ah, Neil. How are your sales coming along?
Oh, they're really, they're going good, excellent.
Oh, I haven't received any record of any sales. Does that sound right?
Oh,
Neil?
what was that?
I hate to remind you, Neil, but the lowest performing employee will be let go at the end of the month, which is tomorrow. I hope to see those sales, Neil.
It's pretty unusual weather we're having.
What's that?
The weather.
Yeah, you're right.
Hey Gav, what did you do before you worked here?
Hey? I don't know. I guess no one's really ever asked me that before.
So you've never thought of doing something else?
I guess not. I just like typing and that.
Oh. Right. Hi. How much would you pay for a toaster like that? And what would you pay for a toaster like? What would you pay? How much would you? How much would you pay? What would you pay a toaster like that? For a toaster like that? Toaster like that?
These are very uncomfortable chairs. I mean, really bad. You sit on these all day? Wow.
It's just a dream. It's not real. It's just a dream.
Well, not quite a dream, but I'll tell you what. It is a lie.
Well, what does that mean?
You're living in a lie.
Oh, yeah, yes. I shouldn't have lied about my sales. I'm not very good at selling
No,
stuff.
not that. This, everything. It's a sham.
A sham.
A sham, yes. It helps to have an open mind about these things. You see that door over there?
Yes?
Have you ever been inside?
No, I guess it's just a storeroom or something.
Is it? Question everything, young man. The world is not quite what it seems.
Isn't it amazing? Corporate had it done last night.
Yeah.
It's a sham.
Hey, this is gonna sound weird. I think we're living in an artificial universe.
What was that?
An ostrich told me the world is fake, and I think I believe it.
An ostrich?
Yeah. And then I fell through a door over there, and I landed in a tray of my own faces. It's probably easier if you come see for yourself. Stand back. Oh. No. That wasn't like that.
Okay, Neil. This was very interesting.
No, Gab, please. You've got to believe me.
I believe you. Are you sure you're feeling okay?
Yes, I'm feeling okay. Look, I was here late last night. Right over here. I spoke with an ostrich. It told me. It told me about the door. And then yes, the book. Gav, it's blank.
That's not blank.
There is something else.
What's that?
Our faces. They come off.
What are you doing?
It's okay, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it does.
Neil, let go of him.
Tired of outdated furniture? Office Ostrich is to the rescue. Deluxe leather desk chair, only $99.90. Floor lamps, only $59. Drawer units for just $120. Head into Office Ostrich. Quality furniture, hassle-free delivery.
Ah, Neil, how are your sales coming along?
Oh, I quit. Yes, I quit.
Neil,
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Guys, can
Oh,
I
no, well,
ask you
you're
all
welcome.
to switch on your cameras, because we'd like to do a short Q&A now in case you guys have any questions right after watching the film. So can I ask everyone who's present to please put on their video so that we can all have a more interactive session. And if there are any questions, please ask away. We'll do another round at the end once Lachlan tells us how this film was made, which I think is the big question. But in case you guys have any questions, please ask away. You can put it in the chat box, like I said earlier. And no questions right now.
What we're looking at on the screen right now is, I guess, the collection of my previous work, to give you an idea of the different kinds of stop motion animation. So you pretty much, if you have a camera, you can animate anything around you. So toys and food and Lego and all sorts of different things. You can move around and take photos to create animation. So I heard that there was a talk about making films with a phone. This is another kind of thing, type of filmmaking that you can do with your phone camera. So yeah, if there's any other questions before I continue, otherwise I will continue.
Yeah, maybe you can continue and we can take some more towards the end.
Excellent. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the film was made. And now that we've seen the film, it's quite a self-reflexive or meta film that continually pokes fun at its own creation. So you're constantly reminded that it's this handcrafted thing. So this all kind of starts with a storyboard or a script. For me, I wrote a script, and then I then made an animatic, which we can see in the top left. And this is essentially a blueprint for the film. So I'm drawing out where the characters are going to be in the frame, what the framing of the shot is going to be, and I guess the pacing of the scene that I'm working on. Down the bottom here, we've got what I guess I'm calling a layout pass, which happens for me when I've almost finished the puppets and the sets, and I can put them all in the positions that they're going to be. And this is an opportunity for me as the animator or the filmmaker to get an idea of have I got everything that I need to make the shot? Can I get lights to where they need to be, cameras? Can the animator access all the puppets? And is that going to be comfortable for, it might be a day or so to animate a shot? So this is all of those technical considerations I'm considering at this stage. So it's quite a boring thing to look at this stage, but we can have those conversations about is this shot going to be achievable? Over on the right here is a sort of very basic 3D model of the scene. So I'll make this pretty early on, maybe even when I'm writing the script. And this helps me understand what the scene is going to look like, particularly with a medium such as stop motion, which is very three-dimensional. It gives me that chance to almost treat it like like this fly around world where I can think about camera angles and perspectives that I can choose from. It also gives me an idea of how big these things are going to be in a real world scale, because remember, I have to make all of these and they have to kind of fit in a manageable space in order to film it. So I'll talk a bit more about that as we move on. So I guess, these are the chunks of the set. You can kind of see here, they break apart into separate portions. The overall office set was about 2 meters or so in width, and it all kind of fit into my living room during lockdowns. So it was supposed to be shot at the stop motion facilities at my university, but unfortunately, or because of lockdowns, it was relocated. So that's, I guess, one of the benefits of stop motion is that you can kind of isolate yourself and continue doing that work. So yeah. And so that modular design is useful if you have a character that's hard to reach. You can kind of break away bits of the set to access them better. And if there's a shot that's only sort of a small portion of the office, you can break away pretty much all of the office and just focus on that one part. So having it modular gives you that flexibility. And yeah, so let's continue on. Now that I've got those like individual modules, I then think about walls and carpet and ceilings. It was important to me that I had as much of everything in the scene as possible. So when I'm taking a photo, what you're seeing is what the final image will be. So having a physical ceiling with little tiny lights lighting the scene was an important part to me, but it meant that it had to have this big ceiling kind of suspended above the set. So you can see here now it has those little lights and a few more props scattered about. And you can see kind of in the background here, there's like a camera, which was pointed out by when I did this talk once, that the camera is in the background. I thought, oh, that's a really great point of reference for like the scale of this set. There's the camera in the back there. But yeah, you can see it coming together. This is one of, I guess, the key props, which is an office chair. And so one of the techniques that I really like using is 3D printing. So it's, I guess, a fairly new technique for stop motion where you model an asset in the computer and then you print it out, and then you dress it up and paint it, and there's some upholstery happening on this chair to give it that handmade finish. I'd be interested to know if any of you have had any experience with 3D printing. I know that I didn't when I was in high school, but you know, times are changing quickly, and so yeah, this is another thing that 3D printing can be used for. And so an important part of it for me was to make sure that that the handmade qualities of stop motion remain intact. The risk with 3D printing is that you can print anything and then it kind of loses that charm that is related to stop motion. So you can see here very quickly, you can build out a stack of these office chairs. And so here's a few more of the other key props. So another chair and a printer. This printer here has printed out. So I've essentially printed a printer, which I think is funny. And so this part of the printer here, like the tray and the buttons here, are printed elements, and then the rest is made out of cardboard and paper, and then it's been painted, and you can see like pencil marks and stuff over it. Particularly on this water cooler here, you can see pencil marks on the front, and the faucets, like the little yeah, I guess you call them faucets. On the front there, those are 3D printed, but then the rest are built out of paper and cardboard to give it that handmade quality. And then the water jug on top, I was searching for like a water bottle that was like the right size and shape, and so I was searching through the supermarket, and I found a bottle of food coloring, and so it was just the right size, and I bought the blue food color so I could tint the water that aqua color that you're seeing there. So that's a real fun part of stop motion, is that you can find solutions to these problems just in your everyday life, and use them to create your little miniature worlds. And so yeah, that's essentially how I built out those sets. There's a lot of cardboard and paper. These boxes are just, printed on a sheet of paper and then folded up. So really simple techniques, and a lot of repetition I find helps quite a lot when you're working essentially by myself for this project. So a lot of repeatable assets helps. You can just sort of pump out a lot to build out that scene. I'm now going to talk about how the puppets are made. And so the thing about puppets is they don't last forever, unfortunately. And so you have to, when you're designing puppets, you have to take into account what they're made of. Is that going to last the length of the film, and things like that? So the main character, Neil, I made 6 of the puppet for the film, and one puppet would maybe last 1 or 2 minutes of animation before something would break. So inside the puppet is like wire that's holding the puppet up, and so that can snap after a while, and also just handling the puppet for a long amount of time can start to make it get a bit dirty, or it can start to not look the same. And so you want to have that consistency. So yeah, you can either repair it after a while or just have a replacement puppet. And so those are factors that you come into when you're working in stop motion. So yeah, this character, like I said, had 6 copies. And then some of the secondary characters that you see maybe once or twice, there's only 1 copy. So the ostrich, for example, there's only 1 ostrich. I only made 1 just because it's not on screen for as long as the main character. So let's walk through how a puppet is made. So I start by sculpting the puppet out of clay. So this is Sculpey clay, which is a modeling clay. And essentially, this is where I'm figuring out what the character is going to look like in 3-dimensional space. So what you're seeing here, you can't animate these. These are just sort of solid clay sculptures that I will usually sculpt these at the script stage. So then it gives me an idea of who these characters are, what their personalities are, and that can help when I'm writing like dialogue and things like that. And then this is also a jumping off point when I'm talking about or trying to figure out what materials each part of the puppet will be made out of. So you might have heard of the term claymation, which is a sort of a term thrown around, and that's where your stop motion animation is predominantly made of clay, and that's what's being animated. For my puppets, there's not so much clay being used. So there's a lot of like 3D printed parts and foam and fabric. And so when you have a lot of different materials, you have to kind of figure out how they're all going to connect together. And so that those questions and you can have those thoughts early on in this stage when you're just working in one material. So what you're seeing here is what's the skeleton of the puppet. So it's a simple armature wire skeleton. And then these bright yellow sections are 3D printed parts for those rigid parts of the body that you don't want them to deform or move. And this helps when you're making like 6 of them, those shapes, those basic shapes are going to stay consistent. And you can see these little holes in the front of the puppet. These are tie down or rigging points. So if the character jumps in the air, you need something holding that puppet in the air. And so you can attach like a rigging device to hold the puppet and fix it in space. And likewise, the feet also have tie down or rigging points where you can essentially screw the foot into the ground so that it won't fall over while you're animating. So yeah, this is what's holding up the puppet, what's inside the puppet. And so once we have that, we can start to build out the rest of the shape of the puppet. And I'm using different types of foam. And so the blue foam here is made out of a yoga mat, and the yellow portion here is a dishwashing sponge. So really, really technical terms that I'm using here. And so, yeah, you can use what you have around you and turn it into something like this. And so the idea there is that the yoga mat is a bit stiffer. And so that's easier for the feet when you're bent, the legs, sorry. You want that to be a bit more rigid, whereas the waist, you can have that a bit more flexible. So yeah, once I've built out that shape, it's then ready to make costumes for. So for me, I like to build it out of fabric. So it's a lot like a doll. And so I pick different fabrics and sometimes glue it directly onto the puppet or hand stitch it onto the puppet. And so this is one of those skills that you don't think that you would need. And so you find yourself learning these really niche skills of like hand sewing, costumes and things like that. I guess the issues with sewing tiny little costumes is you have to sew it onto the puppet. You can't make the costume separately and then put it onto the puppet because like its head is really big, so you couldn't get the shirt over top of its head. So stuff like that becomes an issue. The other things we need to make is hands, for example. Hands are really tricky to make, particularly at the size of this puppet. This puppet is about 16 centimeters tall, which is a bit smaller than average. An average stop motion puppet is maybe 20 centimeters tall, and sometimes you can get much larger ones, but that tends to be the sweet spot when you're making a stop motion puppet. So because it's so small, this hand is about like a centimeter and a half wide, so really small. And so it has been modeled, and then I've made a mold, and then I've put a little tiny wire armature inside and then cast it in silicon. So it can be posed in the various shapes that I need. But you can kind of see the wire poking through the silicon. And so that's the issue there, is that it becomes a nightmare to get that wire to stay inside the mold. So yeah, a little bit more about 3D printing. I printed the various mouth shapes that are required to create those the lip sync. And so for basic speech, it requires about 20 different shapes. And so that's for the main character. For some of the side characters, you can get away with a lot less, so maybe 8 different mouth shapes. And so this is using a style of printing called SLA printing. And so that is a vat of liquid plastic, and it cures each layer one by one, and it lifts it out of the layer of that vat of liquid. And so the advantage of that is it's a really high resolution, which is great for these sort of non-malafalt, really like, yeah, organic shapes like a face. You can get some really nice details at this sort of size. The other style of printing that I use as well is called FDM printing. And this is where you have like a nozzle squirt out hot plastic layer by layer. And so it's the more common form, but you can kind of see in this example, the individual layer lines are kind of appearing, whereas the other form is a lot less noticeable. And so you can get a lot crisper details. I still use this sort of printing for chairs and background objects. So I'm using a combination of both. FDM printing is also great for structural components. It's made out of the same material as Lego. So if you've ever stood on a piece of Lego, you know how rock solid Lego is. So once those puppets are made, I will usually make one puppet first to kind of get an idea of if it's going to work. And so what these are animation tests. And I'm trying to figure out if the puppet can achieve the posing or the movements that I need for the animation. And so at this stage, I can flag any issues. Like early on, there was a problem with the trouser material, didn't have much stretch in it, so it couldn't lift its foot very high. And so stuff like that I can flag at this stage. And so I went and changed the material so that the leg could bend a bit more, and that fabric had enough stretch in the fabric so that it could achieve that.
Ah, Neil. How are your sales coming along?
Oh, they're going good. Excellent.
Oh,
So what we're seeing here is I guess all the materials that I have when I go into animate. So at the top here, we're seeing
What?
to remind you, Neil, but the lowest
Let me just
performing
play that
employee
through.
will be let go at the end of the month, which is tomorrow. I hope to see those sales, Neil.
Yeah, so what we're seeing is at the top is the, or let's wait for it to come back. Up the top here is the reference footage. So I'll film myself kind of acting out the scene. And this gives me an idea of, I guess, those sort of nuanced performance moments that I can include while I'm animating. In the bottom left is the lip sync. So I'll have already figured out what the lip sync will be, and each face has its own little code. So I know exactly which face to put on the puppet on any given frame. And so that's there. I also have, I guess, a layout pass down the bottom. And then you can see the final shot in the bottom right. So those are the materials. The more materials or the more reference you have before you go into a shot, the better. I guess the issue with stop motion is you can't go back and tweak once you've finished animating. So you kind of have one take and that's it, or you start all over again. So the more material, the more reference you have, the easier it is to animate that shot.
Hey, this is gonna sound weird. I think we're living in an artificial universe.
What was that?
An ostrich told me the world is fake, and I think I believe it.
An ostrich?
Yeah. And then I fell through a door over there, and I landed in a tray of my own faces. It's probably easier if you come see for yourself.
So yeah, this is kind of where I spend the most time. I spent maybe 10 months animating about 11 minutes. So it's about a minute a month of animation. And so that gives you kind of an idea of how long this process takes. There's a funny bit of reference footage coming up where the puppet's falling, and yeah, this shot here, and I've shot my reference footage of me sort of lying on a stool to shoot the legs, and then let's play that again. And then I've shot the upper body of me just standing up, and I've cut that together. So you find yourself doing really silly stuff, but it never ends up in the final film. So or unless you show it to people, which is what I'm doing right now. So after we've finished animating, there's some post-productional things that we do. One of those is green screens, green screen removal. And so there's a gag in the film where the green screen keeps flickering on and off. And so often there'll be things like that needs to be corrected in post-production. Another thing is rig removal. So like I was saying, if the puppet jumps into the air, it needs to be held up by a rig. And so we can see it in this side of the screen, the before side. And so that needs to be masked out and replaced with a blank background. Oh, yes. And so that's about as much as I'm going to say about the behind the scenes. I'm going to leave it on a quote that I got from Peter Lord from Aardman Animation. So he co-directed Chicken Run and worked on like Wallace and Gromit and those sort of films. When I finished the film, I submitted it to a festival and Peter Lord was the judge. And so he watched my film and had this to say of the film. He said, "This is done with immense flair and inventiveness. The voices are great. And for me, tonally, it doesn't put a foot wrong, just clever and funny." And so that was just this amazing moment where one of your heroes has seen your film and enjoyed it and had this to say. So I thought I'd end on that note. And I think now we'll see if you have any more questions that I can answer. Yeah, I'll throw over to you guys.
Thank you so much, Lachlan. That was fantastic. It was, I mean, obviously, congratulations firstly on making this film and for showing it to us. Thank you very much. It is, I mean, Peter Lord said it really the best in terms of it was, it's a very, very meta film. I think that's the best part about it. That's what makes it stand out, that the character is also very self-aware about something and you're seeing it in the background. So I just want to sort of preface this Q&A session for everyone and say that this is obviously a very, very high standard of animation. And this is, maybe you can also tell us a little bit more about how long you have been working towards making a film like this, not just physically like the timeline that you had to create this film, but how long it took you to build the skill set, because you've demonstrated so many of them, in your presentation alone, to be able to do that, because you don't learn and you don't make something like this overnight. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that. We'll start by taking some of the questions, but the first one we have got, in any case, coincidentally, was how long did it take for you to make this film? So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So yeah, this film was part of a 3-year program. So it was part of my doctoral studies. I had to be a researcher as well, which is kind of a new thing for me. So it took place within 3 years. So all the storyboarding and the screenwriting and set building and puppet making and voice recording and animatics and everything like that took place, and animating, of course, took place in that 3 years. But going back to that larger question of how long do these skills take to develop, it takes a lot longer. And it's one of those things that it's practice. It takes a long time. And I'm still practicing. I'm only at the beginning of my journey as well. And so I started this sort of filmmaking back in high school. So I made my first claymation short film in high school. And so that was my first experience with that. And there was something about it that I really enjoyed. And so I went to university and studied animation. And so in my first year at university, they teach you every single kind of animation, so hand-drawn and computer animation, and you learn life drawing and all those sort of things. And it wasn't until my second year where I found my way back to stop motion. And I think it was something to do with the problem solving of that kind of animation. It's sort of halfway between live action filmmaking and animation. You're still using cameras and lights and stuff like that. So it's a little bit like a miniature live action set, but it's just playing out very slowly. And so these skills take a long time to build up. And I know when I started, it didn't look great, but you were really excited about it. And I think that's the key to it, is you keep getting better with each new thing that you make. And yeah, that's what's kept me going this whole time.
Okay. So that's, I think, really important to set context for everyone, because you must understand that even though it looks like a short film, like he's mentioned, he's been doing this 3 years in his, program alone, and before that, many years that takes to sort of build this. So start now. I think it's a sort of takeaway from that. Before we take the next question, Lachlan, can I ask you to stop sharing your screen so we can maybe have you front and center and so everyone can see you? We'll just take a second for that.
Oh, there we go.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. So our next question is from MGM School Bokaro, which is a little bit about the expenses that go into making something like this. So can you give us a little bit about maybe, how you receive funding, or when you started off, maybe it would be more helpful if we find out when you started off, what kind of resources did you have at your disposal? How did you manage to work with what you had?
Yeah. So yeah, I made this film through a university program. So the funding was through that. There was, obviously a little bit of money for study expenses related to the project. And then you had access to all of the university's resources, like facilities and equipment and stuff like that. And then, it's a lot of your own time that goes into it as well, which is, a lot of this film was just myself. And so you end up giving a lot of your time to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We also have another question about what are the softwares that you have used? Like you initially, to model out what you were seeing, your first couple of slides. Can you tell us a little bit about that software particularly that helps you envision your film and sort of like brings it to life for you? And also, again, a beginner level animation software maybe that kids can use on their phones or they can download with ease. Because that could be a good place for everyone to start as well if, they sort of interested in it.
Absolutely. The software that I showed at the start was a 3D modeling software called Autodesk Maya, which is the sort of CGI animation software. There's another software called Blender as well, which is free, and so that's a great one to look at as well, particularly because it is accessible. And then stop motion software, I use a software called Dragon Frame. But I know there's phone apps. There's one called Stop Motion Pro, I believe. But I know there's quite a lot of stop motion apps. So have a look at them and just pick one. I think they're all quite good. And yeah, I think that's the nice thing at the moment, is that a lot of people have access to a phone or a camera, and so you can get going quite quickly and start animating anything that's around you. So yeah, you can animate like I've got like a little USB here, and you could maybe animate that whizzing around your desk or something like that. So it doesn't take much to start animating and then start having fun.
Okay, great. So you can always, Google your way through this. I have personally at least heard of Blender, and I know that that seems to be the space that a lot of people, especially because it's free, and that's obviously a very real consideration for people. So, that's another like sort of good place to start. And are there any interesting or like particular heroes of yours as animators that you would recommend people watch their work on and learn from them in some way? Maybe when they're starting out, is there anyone that you can recommend?
Yeah, there's an animator called Kevin Parry on YouTube, and he does some really cool stop motion videos, but then also has some like beginner how-to videos and stuff like that, which is worth checking out for those who want to get into animating in stop motion.
Amazing. Okay, so check that out, guys, for anyone who's interested. The next question that we have is from Vidhi at All Saints, who's asking specifically about movement of the character. So how do you move the character, and how do you make the transitions more effective, is her question.
Yeah, really good question. It's a lot of things. There's one of the big ones is practice. So it just takes a lot of practice, and you get better at it slowly. There are what we call animation principles, and there's 12 of them. And so that comes into it. So some of them will be like arcs, or ease in and ease out, and silhouettes, and all these sort of things. And you can Google that, the 12 principles of animations, and it'll have the list of them there. The other thing is reference footage really helps, because like one of the pursuits is to have your animation look like it's living and breathing. And then the other side of thing is they're also acting and performing and emoting and that whole side of things. So getting it to just look like it's alive is hard enough. And so once you can get to that level, then you can start to, I guess, think about the acting. But ideally, you're kind of thinking about both at the same time.
It's interesting that you mentioned acting, because actually one of the first questions we had gotten was whether you consider yourself as an actor also, because you have played a character in your film, you know, your voice is there, your reference is there. So do you think of animators as actors as well?
I do now. I don't think I always did, because animators are generally quite shy, or like they don't really, like they're sort of sitting in front of a computer, like they're not in front of the camera and stuff like that. And so yeah, it took me a while to kind of realize that. And it was only, I think, during this film where I realized I'm kind of just an actor, just acting out a performance through a puppet very slowly. So yeah, I think it's quite true that you do feel a bit like an actor, particularly in stop motion, because it's what we call a straight ahead process. So you're starting on frame 1, going to frame 2, going to frame 3, whereas in other styles of animation, you do all the key poses and then you do the in-betweens. And so because it's a straight ahead process, it feels sequential, which is the way actors are, or like you're playing it out in that sequential way. So you feel kind of like a stage actor. You're just doing it very, very slowly. Yeah.
Okay, that's very incredible, because I actually didn't realize that stop motion animation was a linear form, because generally in filmmaking, we do things for efficiency, right? When we club certain shots that we're shooting one after the other, we do it so that we save time, or we sort of, ensure some things. So in that sense, maybe having it be linear also ensures your continuity. But at the same time, I was interested because you had mentioned that you have made models of each of your sort of, characters, and then there are parts that make up those characters. So how do you, apart from making the molds, but the stuff that you're stitching or you're like, creating physically yourself, how do you ensure uniformity across sort of multiple models?
I'm not sure. I think the audience is quite forgiving. If you were to like bring up 2 of them and look at them side by side, maybe you'd spot differences. But I think because you're only seeing one at a time, I think if you get it to maybe 90% of the way there, the audience isn't going to pull you up on it, I don't think. And then I take a lot of measurements. I draw diagrams. I have prototypes and things that I can refer to. And get a ruler out and be like, how big was this thing again? And for the costumes, I have patterns and things like that. So particularly when you're making multiples of things, having all of that helps, so that, you keep that consistency.
Okay. And so we have another question about how, you do the full setup and how you sort of make it bright, which is, I think, a question about like the lighting and the way that you use cameras, the way you shoot, I think, a stop motion animation film. So the principles for that, if students are familiar with how to shoot live action, can those same principles be used for the basics, at least, of setting up a stop motion set?
Absolutely, yes. So yeah, that's one of the cool things about stop motion is it is pretty much the same. It's just miniature. So with that, there are a few challenges, but in terms of what a camera does and how a camera works, it's all exactly the same. So yeah, it is yeah, kind of the best of both worlds is you can have a little set and you can take as much time as you want, and yeah, it all kind of translates. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any more questions, guys? Anyone from the LXL team also would like to ask? Because I know that when we were watching this film, then there were a lot of questions. So, is there anyone who would like to share? Because you're not going to get a
Many
chance
have
to
been
speak.
answered. Many have been answered for me. So thank you.
Okay. Because you're not going to get a chance to speak to an Oscar-nominated filmmaker every day. So I would suggest you take this opportunity. Any further ones? All right. Is there anything, Lachlan, that you would like to share as, maybe like a sort of parting thing to keep in mind for students? Something that maybe you were told at like a younger age that has, held you up over the last couple of years while you've been doing this? Because also, like you mentioned earlier on, this is a very individual process. Like you can have a bigger team, of course, to help you out, but you sort of pretty much made this film by yourself, right? Like you have done this all on your own. And so that could have gotten frustrating and tiring and exhausting at some points, I'm sure. And so what was something that kept you going, maybe that you can share with the students?
Yeah, I think my advice is to find that thing that you enjoy. And I think that can sometimes be difficult to find that. And so yeah, for me, it was this antiquated, outdated even technique of animation. And so to stick with it for so long, in the back of my mind thinking, am I going to be able to get a job in this, or is it going to equate to anything? And so having that, I guess, tenacity, or to stick with it for so long, and to have it pay off like this has been great. And to be able to talk to people like you guys and kind of shine a light on stop motion and some of the most enjoyable things have been people coming up to me and showing me their stop motion thing that they made because they saw my story, and that's really exciting because yeah, stop motion's fun, and it's exciting when people continue to do this kind of animation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Lachlan, we do have another question from TI School. It's come. They have a specific question about how long it took to shoot this, just the shooting part of it alone. Could you just shed some light on maybe?
That was 10 months. So 10 months for a 10-minute film. So about a minute of animation a month.
Okay, amazing. The statistics are kind of scary, guys. I get it when I'm also hearing this, but you see the amount of effort that it takes to make something like this. But these are also films that'll stay in your head and make you think and sort of be with you for a long time. So it's a very, very special form, I feel. And this is such a fantastic film. And the amount you've managed to sort of put into 9 or 10 minutes, I think is the length of your film has, I mean, it really left me when I watched it for the first time. I was like, what have I just seen? How have you managed to conceptualize this? And so all of it, all of the time and the many, many years that it took, you have all of our like deep and heartfelt congratulations, because it was absolutely worth it. What a wonderful piece of work you have created. So thank you so much for sharing it with us, for running us through your process and giving us like tips and tricks to keep in mind. I hope everyone has been taking notes and sort of, has it in, written down some things. Yeah, I think with that, we'll conclude today's session. And if everyone can just give it up for Lachlan. I can't hear you guys because they are all on mute.
Thank you very
but
much.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for being here. And yeah, good luck for everything that is to come. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.